So hello everyone and welcome to today's Security by Live panel discussion titled Supporting the Frontline. My name is Rebecca Spin, I'm the Managing Editor of the Security Buyer portfolio and I'm your host for this session. We're joined by three very distinguished experts who bring an entire wealth of knowledge and insight into different facets of the security industry. And today we're going to aim to delve into some of the critical aspects affecting our frontline security professionals, including mental health, training and the integration of new technology in security practices. So first, I'm joined by Mike Reddington, the CEO of the British Security Industry Association, and he brings extensive knowledge about the overall security landscape and the role of policy in shaping industry standards. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on board. Could you please start by introducing yourself and giving us a little insight into the BSIA?
Yeah, thank you, Becky, and thank you for the invite to participate in this panel discussion. The BSIA is the British Security Industry Association. It's a not-for-profit trade association that was established 56 years ago to represent those operating the professional security industry sector. Our membership represents circa 70% in value terms of the professional security industry. Our drive is promoting best practice and then identifying those best practice to be developed into codes of standards. So we work on behalf of our members with the standards bodies, the certification bodies, such as the NSI and the SSIB, also with the regulators, such as the SIA, and also lobby government on behalf of our members and the wider industry. Our strapline for our entity is the voice of the professional security industry. So we act as a vehicle and a voice in raising both the challenges and potential opportunities within our sector with the relevant stakeholders, the general public and the government.
Well, thank you, Mike. And next up, we have our second Mike and Security by Live veteran, Mike Hurst, Director of IFPO UK, whose expertise lie in enhancing training and professional development for security officers and bettering mental health awareness. Mike, thank you for joining us today. Please, could you also give us a little brief insight into IFPO and the work that you do for the frontline?
So, yeah, excuse me. And yeah, again, thanks. Nice to be here. IFPO is the International Foundation for Protection Officers. It was established about 1988. We're a membership body, also not for profit, and we operate globally and we support frontline officers through education, certification, and allow them to develop a career in security. We have a suite of e-learning, accredited e-learning based in the UK, and also we've got our global certifications. We've got the CPO, which is the Certified Protection Officer, and the CSSM, which is the Certified in Security Supervision and Management. I just will think, get the idea. The CPO. This is the textbook for the CPO. So it's that sort of 500 odd pages. So it's pretty comprehensive. This is volume edition 9. Edition 10 is with the printers as we speak. So I think I mentioned that only the part because the fact that it was 10 editions shows how well it's been accepted globally. Research is very important to us. We recently commissioned Professor Martin Gill to do a piece of research, which, and I'll read this out, the competence of frontline security professionals and what they say about their work. This was a survey of about 10,500 officers and about 2,000 of those were in the UK, and that's free to download from the website. And in middle last year, we produced a competency model that has been accepted by the US Department of Labour as the official model for security and patrol services in the US. And we're hoping we can sort of roll it out into other areas as well. But that's broadly us, and back to you.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Mike. Thank you for that. And last but not least, we're joined by Daniel Garnon, the President of the Security Industry Federation, and actually the inspiration behind this panel. Daniel is known for his focus on supporting security officers for better working conditions, pay and counselling. So Daniel, could you also give us a quick overview of your background and that of the Security Industry Federation?
All right, well, thank you for having me. And yes, my background was 20 years in policing as a career before founding the Security Industry Federation trade union. Whilst in the police, I was used to working with our security counterparts, the regulatory body, the SIA, and I had a a role in the Manchester Arena attack. I was the trauma manager after the attack took place. So I had a vested interest in the Protect Duty, Martin's Law, and when I left the police after 20 years, I decided to go into teaching and training, which is why I had my cyber company. However, I started doing some SIA license training for the CCTV operators, door supervisor, and it was during that time when I was conducting that training that I was having conversations with the delegates, and they were, having little bits of complaining about the industry and, what could be better. And it followed the same theme of pay, working conditions, etc. So my go-to response, having been part of a police federation for 20 years, was go and speak to your trade union. And they said they didn't really have a bespoke one they could, use. So from that, we developed the Security Industry Federation, and we've been going for 18 months strong now. We have hundreds of members across the UK, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. And we are the trade union for the security industry. We, on a daily basis, represent our members in disciplinary or grievances hearings. We support through 2P, through redundancy or any employment issues. And yeah, it's going from strength to strength, and we're proud to be able to support our frontline workers.
Thank you, Daniel. And just to give a kind of contextual overview of why we're here today on this panel discussion, I think at the moment we find ourselves in an era where kind of demands on security personnel are increasingly complex, and that's influenced heavily by emerging technologies and evolving threats as well. And the need for robust support structures, effective training programs, and attention to the mental health of our frontline staff has never been more pronounced, which is everything that you guys are standing for today. We currently face a lack of guidance in the midst of kind of constant changing protocols, more so on the kind of differences between different sites. So, for example, in retail, we have a cost of living crisis at the moment, so shoplifting is dramatically increased, and yet there is still this kind of do not intervene protocols that are in place in some establishments, but not others. So while others also rely on technology to face these kind of new challenges. So security officers are having an increasingly difficult time fulfilling or understanding their job requirements, and this can also put a strain on an already difficult role, as well as their mental health. So this brings us to our first kind of talking point, which is mental health and well-being. So Daniel, I'm going to come back to you first. Considering obviously your comprehensive oversight of the industry, how has the conversation around mental health for security personnel evolved? And what steps is Security Industry Federation taking to address this kind of critical area?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're quite correct that this changing policy, depending on who you work with or for, the client's needs, etc., is the reason why our manifesto at the beginning of the year was to try and bring a overarching policy into the industry so that people know what they're following. People are going to work on a Monday at one site with one set of rules, on Tuesday with a different set of rules. And it, like you said, it's going to add to well-being issues, mental health issues. If you're getting in trouble at one site, people, we're adults, we're frontline security workers, and we don't go to work wanting to be getting in trouble ourselves. We're there to help other people, members of the public. So we're doing the best to our ability. Now, as you said, we do a hard, difficult job. We outnumber the police in the UK 4-1 because there's 130,000 police officers in the UK, and that's a dwindling number. And there's 460,000 SIA licenses being issued. Now, coupled with the fact that there are some industries like the railway industry that don't currently require an SIA license to work security on their premises, then we know that there's like 500,000 security officers in the UK, and a lot of them on the front line protecting us every day. Now, you think about a busy Friday or Saturday night in the city centre, and it's, it can go sideways very, very quickly. You've got people influenced by alcohol. You've got larger groups of people in small locations, and we've got security officers that come to us on a Monday morning. They've been assaulted over the weekend, they've been racially abused, and it takes a toll on their mental health. Now, often a lot of these people haven't got someone else to talk to, whether it be family or a support network. So what we've introduced to our members is the Care First package. and that allows them to use a telephone service 24/7. So it could be 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. They can pick up the phone, and they're not just speaking to anybody, they're speaking to a trained counsellor in mental health and well-being, and they can use that as their sounding board. They can get tips, they can get advice, and if it's warranted between that member and the caller, they can actually then get face-to-face support. So we all know if we went to our GP, it could take 6, 7, 8 months before we actually sit face-to-face down with a counsellor, because we're on a waiting list. Whereas what we aim is within 48 hours, we will get someone sat down in the town, village or city they live in with a counsellor, which is, again, unheard of if you were to go to the NHS. So it's about getting someone support immediately, there and then, whether it's in the middle of the night or whether it's in their own town or city, to be able to sit down and have that conversation.
Thank you, and it's great to hear the kind of good work the Security Industry Federation is doing for frontline officers. And one of the other kind of critical aspects of the challenge of the role of a security officer is the stigma and reputation around that kind of role. And this is something I know that the BSIA is working quite hard to change. So Mike, I'm going to come to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in this kind of new campaign of yours?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. And I agree with you, is that I think the challenge our industry sector and those operating it face doesn't have the profile or recognition of the critical work that's undertaken by security officers. And one of them I'll go back to, in many instances, it's still referred to in an antiquated way as man guarding, whereas that's neither gender inclusive, and guarding is somewhat of an antiquated description of the activities that those operating in the sector undertake. So we've consciously changed all the language within our entity and in our interaction with those operating in the sector to security officers. So which is more gender inclusive, but also the days have gone of a person sitting at a factory gate in a wooden hut managing access of vehicles in and out, or people in and out, are long gone. Is that and all we also see on many occasions is adverse press around the experiences that people have that may not be as positive, and less about all the positive work that's undertaken within our sector. And the BSIA over 2 years ago brought together 10 of the top 20 players in the sector by financial value to actually discuss and identify common issues and challenges that we face collectively as the industry, that by working together we can improve for the entire industry. And that brought out some interesting subjects, and unanimously everybody within the room referenced that the recognition of the sector and those operating in it is not where it should be. And if we don't change that, nobody else is going to change that. So through those discussions, and lots of them, we created a campaign which is known as the 3 Ps campaign, which stands for people, property and places, with a strapline of professionally protected. And that is aimed around promoting and articulating the positive work that those operating in the sector undertake. We actually invested in a marketing campaign, and I have to say one of our experiences through that was trying to get positive news stories published in standard news media was very difficult. We did manage to get features in the Sunday Times, the Telegraph and the Sun, which is still the largest readership of any newspaper, and all the industry journals as well. And what it is to get those operating in the sector to actually promote positive examples of the work we do. As Daniel said earlier, the actual security officers operating within our sector are on a ratio of 4:1 versus the police officers. So in many instances that it takes place, is a security officer is usually the first responder in an incident. Yet most people don't see a security officer, yet they're operating in plain sight until they need one. So we're actively encouraging our members and those operating in the industry to share with us good news stories that we can promote And we're also linked to that is promoting our industry as a career of choice, because it is a career, yet many people choose the security industry as an initial career. If you talk to lots of people in it, they've stumbled into the industry, but end up staying in it for 20 and 30 years. And I was similar. I've been in this industry sector 30 years, and I was actually attracted to it from somebody I know. But so what we want to do is promote people, and actually promote to people and the general public, and then promoting the fact that the drive is actually keeping people and property and places safe. And I'm delighted to say we've had the support from the other associations recognised by the SIA, and in line with that one is the SIA have now endorsed the campaign. So what we will start to see is we'll see another round of promotion actually of our industry sector through the 3Ps. The other thing you'll see is the badge I'm wearing is a 3Ps badge, because what we wanted to do is to create an identity for the campaign. And badges are a great identity in terms of a bit like the actual prostate cancer or the Alzheimer's badge. And what the badge does actually stimulates a conversation in many instances. And I've had a number of where people say, "What's the badge, Mike?" Which then opens up the door for you to actually share with people the positive activities that take place in our industry sector and the critical work in keeping people, property and places protected.
Definitely. I think that opening up of dialogue is incredibly important. And actually, you raised a very good point, which I just want to touch on quickly, is the kind of the lack of upskilling or the difficulty in recruitment into the security industry, not just on the front line, but, across the entire industry. Do you think the kind of the taboo reputation, so to speak, of what we've previously had for security officers has hindered this recruitment process?
I think it certainly hasn't helped, and I think we do need to change the profile of our sector, because there's lots of opportunity within our industry sector, but people aren't aware of it. I mean, to give an example, is that through the research we've undertaken, we believe there's a shortage of about 60,000 frontline officers, and there's a shortage of about 30,000 electronic security engineers. And the demographic, we have an aging demographic within our sector. So even though we've got new people joining, they're not joining at the rate that people are actually leaving on retirement age. And we need to change that collectively as an industry. And we need to actually share the opportunities and benefits of joining our industry. We've got many examples of somebody joining the industry as a frontline officer and then is now at the boardroom table at large and medium enterprises. So there's plenty of opportunity. And it's not just, and we'll talk later about technology, it's an exciting industry with lots of opportunities. And I think sometimes we can actually be our own worst enemy. Sometimes we don't focus on all the positive opportunities while we're trying to defend some negative observations and trying to make sure you've got the balance. So we actively encourage those operating in the sector to share your experiences of it. There's some really wonderful examples of people's job satisfaction and career progression within the professional security industry sector.
Some pretty staggering and concerning statistics, especially when you think of, in terms of Daniel's stats earlier about, 4 to 1, when you think how many security officers, roles that we're lacking in, that also brings to light, how short staffed we are in the police as well. It's definitely some industries that we need to kind of work towards improving that kind of relatability and excitement into the industry, because you're right, it is a very exciting industry. And I just wanted to pose a question to all of you. So Mike, Hurst, we'll come to you first. How can industry leaders, better support the recognition and mental health of the front line, especially in kind of high stress environments?
Well, thanks, Rebecca. Before I answer that, I just wanted to pick up what Mike was saying. I think the 3Ps is a great campaign. I've got my 3Ps badge. I'm not wearing it today, but I do have one. I've got two, actually, I think. Great idea. And in my humble opinion, is exactly the kind of the BSIA should be doing. They are the industry body for that sort of thing, and I'm fully supportive of it. And it I mentioned some thoughts later on this, but it's so important. Getting that perception, getting people to value it is so important, and I'm sort of fully supportive of it. And I look forward to hearing the new initiatives, Mike. And if I can support at all, please just let me know.
Thanks, Mike.
On the mental health piece, now, IFPO, we've got some accredited training at levels 1, 2, and 3 on this. I think we're working at level 4 as well, but certainly 1, 2, and 3 are available. And I mean, we're slightly different from Daniel. Daniel was very much on that sort of with the people side. Ours is very much education and certification training, so it's complementary, but sort of it doesn't really overlap in that sense. But we have the training, we have the education which we're pushing out, and it's going well. And it's designed for frontline people. It's not just a generic mental. I mean, I think we try to avoid the phrase mental health first aid. It's mental health awareness, because I think it gives a false impression of what you can actually do. Because if you do physical first aid, you can put someone in a recovery position, you can administer CPR. Mental health first aid is a slight misnomer, we feel, so we go for different titles. But there's so it's a really good stuff out there. Separate from IFPO, I with some other people, we set up an initiative called Security Minds Matter, which is now officially supported by SIA. We're very grateful for their support and encouragement. And this is very much about raising awareness and delivering change to help port officers. A couple of practical things. We're looking to change some of the British standards and also the ACS Companies Assessment Scheme, which makes no reference currently to mental health. So we're looking to try and influence and change there. The British standard change will happen. I think it will just take a bit of time. We produced a mental health continuum document just to show you the various stages and what to look out for, what to be aware of. And that's, again, freely available. Personally, I spoke at a lot of events in the UK on mental health. I was name dropping now, I was in Vienna for ACES Europe last month talking about mental health. I've spoken about it for ACES at GSX in last year with Dan at a few places, and we did some webinars and that. We've got 2 webinars this year. Obviously the ACES members, unfortunately, but it's rather than wider people. So working very hard behind the scenes, and a lot of it is, breaking down stigma and creating an environment whereby discussions around mental health can happen, and talk about them. I won't say who it was, but a friend of mine who you will know if I mentioned it, but I won't mention it. They had a very big company, one of the biggest companies. Over COVID, one site they had lost 2 officers through COVID. The site manager had to deal with this. Apparently one day he walked through reception, goes to the roof, walks straight off. And they said if they had known, they'd have done something. But he hadn't shown any symptoms, hadn't they were devastated, obviously, because using something for COVID is bad enough, but this is something that they could have prevented. And also, the last couple of years, I've been a judge of the ACS Pacesetters Officers of Distinction Award, and a significant number of those entries are people who have saved someone's life. They've dragged it off a car park roof. They pulled off a railroad track. They've found someone hanging, and it's stuff that shouldn't happen. And mental health is. I've got lots of stats and figures about it. There's all sorts of angles you come at it with. But for me, you help the people. It's good for people. It's good for the companies because absenteeism, president, all this sort of stuff, save money, return investment, all this. But also it's better for security. If you're looking after your people, you're delivering better security to people, to your clients. So for me, it's a no-brainer. But it's not as simple as that, as we know.
No, definitely not as simple as that. But yeah, thank you, Mike. And also, Security Minds Matter is another great campaign, and you can actually we've got an article in the next issue of Security Bias, so please do check it out as well. Moving on to you, Daniel. I don't know whether you want me to repeat the question, but how can the industry leaders better support and recognition of mental health?
Yeah, I think it comes down to recognising the toll that our work does on our mental health, has on our mental health and our well-being. This is a 24/7 role. Whether it's in policing or security, it was the same role in the fact that you're away from your family, you miss birthdays, you miss Christmases and New Year's, etc., because you're out there and you're protecting other people when you could be with your family. So it's a vocation, people, this is a job that you do because you want to protect people. So it's only right that we protect them, which is why our tagline for the SIF is security for security. What can we give back to them? Now, I mentioned earlier that I was the trauma manager for the Manchester Arena attack. I dealt with a lot of fatalities and railway suicides when I was in the police for that 20 years. So anything that a company can do, including us, to be able to support Security Minds Matter, running on Empty, Consortium for Prevention of Suicides, just to name a few, that's what people need to start taking up and start looking after their staff, because at the moment we find it's lip service. You'll have it blazoned across the websites that they are keen supporters of mental health and well-being, but when push comes to shove, what we're seeing when it goes to disciplinaries or even tribunals, these people are left on their own. And a lot of our members over the last 18 months have not had the support they thought they would have, which is again why when we have Care First for them, it's really, really important, because it provides them that support when they're going through those processes where they are locked in a battle. And, we try and get to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, because, again, sometimes, whether you're winning or losing, it's difficult process to go through.
Thank you. And lastly, Mike, have you got anything to add on this topic? I know BSIA is considered one of the leaders, so you're already doing a lot, which you've spoken about.
I'll just reiterate what I said earlier about the 3Ps campaign. I would actively encourage everybody involved in the industry to get behind it, and collectively that we're talking with one voice and promoting positive examples of the work that those operating on the front line undertake. The BSA also has the British Security Awards event, which is an annual event that's running in July of this year, where we recognise those that have gone above and beyond in terms of protecting people, property and places. And again, I'd encourage those operating the sector to put nominations forward, because there are thousands of examples of the really positive and critical work that those operating on the front line undertake. And in terms of mental health and well-being, I know there's lots of work going on within our sector, and I think it needs to continue in removing the stigma around mental health and well-being that some people have, potentially partly because of the demographic of our workforce that's operating. But encourage people. It's actually good to talk, but give them an environment to be able to talk and comfortably and easily raise any issues and concerns they may have. As Mike said, that horrific reference there to somebody who actually couldn't cope with it and didn't speak to anybody. We need to avoid that. Let's make it easy for people to talk, and then when they do share their issues and concerns with them, respond to them.
Yeah, definitely wise words there. And obviously, I know we could probably talk about mental health all day, but to move on to the kind of training and professional development side of the panel, security threats become more sophisticated in the landscape today. We know that, and the technology used to combat these, are increasingly advancing. Just take AI, for example. The need for this continuous upskilling and effective training methodologies is very important. And this section will explore or aim to explore how adaptive training programs can ensure that security personnel are not only prepared for the challenges of today, but are also equipped to kind of anticipate these and respond to the dynamic threats of tomorrow. So, Mike, I'm going to come to you first from IFPO. I feel like I could keep needing to clarify which Mike. But obviously, as we know, training is pivotal to ensuring kind of competence, like that word comes up again, competence, and confidence of security personnel. So could you share some insights into the current trends in training within the industry, maybe how IFPO UK are addressing the need for kind of continuous development?
Sure. I mean, you can't even say the Mike with the bald hair and glasses, can you really? So, actually, Danny was far too good head of hair to be in, though, really. Well, I mean, lots of people talk about training, and it's we all know it's important, but a lot of companies, they do it and they see it as a necessary evil, really. I was talking to a company, again, not to mention obviously, and about taking some of the IFPO training, and they were talking to someone else, and we came up with a really punchy price, and they most of go with it, but someone else was offering some training modules at £3.50 a module. Now, I've not seen it, but I know it's rubbish because it's less than a meal deal. You can get a cheese sandwich and a Coke for that sort of price. So it's I mean, there's no learning in that. You might see a few PowerPoints and you tick a box, and that's not learning. That's not education. So. Also, don't get me wrong, I appreciate running a contract guarding business or contract security company, whatever you call it, is tough. Margins are really tight, and it's not easy to do. And there's some great companies that do really well, offering great service, looking after the people, everything. But a lot of it comes from the clients as well. And again, this tells into the work the BSIA are doing and others is. They don't see security as of value. It's a commodity. It's something they've got to have security. They don't know why they got to get the people on there. They don't really care what they're being paid. They don't really care. As long as they're there, that ticks the box for the insurance company, health safety. And this is if we can raise the profile of it, it's become so important. And the other thing I think you mentioned about sort of CPD. If we want to be a profession, we've got to have CPD. I'm not going to say compare the skill level of it, but if you were, doctors, lawyers, accountants, they all do CPD. You've got to keep your skills up to date and alive. I mean, certainly our certification, I mentioned 2, we have 3 certifications. All of those certifications need to be recertified every 2 years. If you don't recertify by demonstrating CPD, you lose it. And same with I also hold the ACCPP certification. Again, I've got to do it every 3 years. I've just recertified this recently. So if I don't recertify, if I don't earn the CPD points, I lose it. And I think that's same. So as well, it's so important. I mean, we've got our conference plugged June the 13th, and Mike and Daniel are both speaking at. So thanks, chaps. And we'll all do CPD points that because the level of the speakers and the interactions are going to be really good, really high. So that's also it's about the career planning side of things. In January, we released a book, and I'll read this again: Security Officer to Chief Security Officer, a guide to workforce competencies, risks, and career planning. And this is an 80-odd page book. It's free for download on the site. It's been really well received. The number of downloads has been incredible. Really surprised about it. And again, because we're there to support people through their careers, and as I think both Mike and Daniel said, it can be a great career. It's really interesting. Lots of things you can do. As I think Mike said, the days of the 60-year-old, that's quite young. The older guy warming his hands over a brazier on a building site. It's long gone. That's the past. It's and you ties in some of the tech questions later on. You'll probably go ask us, but. It's a much more involved role than it used to be, and there are, as others can. I can name people who started off doing close protection work or security officer works, and ended up being, CSOs or directors running companies, and did brilliantly. So it's in the same way that any other job, any other profession, career, people just need the support and the help to get them through the various steps and on from there.
Definitely, thank you. And coming to other Mike, we mentioned briefly earlier about the kind of changing in protocols and in retail, for example. And I know that obviously the BSIA have just released their code of practice for the ethical use of facial recognition, and that's just many of multiple codes and practices that the BSIA publish. And I'm not entirely sure how it would work, but there seems to be plenty of guidance on offer, but a lack of kind of codes or standards or legislation between how we can instruct like retail establishments, for example, on their protocols for the security officers. is there something we can do in this department? Obviously not right here, right now, but something that we can collectively work towards in the security world to kind of push towards more kind of clear legislation.
Yeah, Becky, thanks for that. And I think what may be worthwhile, the first thing I would say is that technology is moving at a rapid pace across all industries, and security sector's not immune to that. And particularly in the areas of artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology. And I believe what we should do as an industry sector is to embrace that technology and see how we can apply it, not to replace human resources, but to actually enhance the services that are provided to the general public in the and commercial sectors in the protection of people, property, and places. And you referenced facial recognition, and what I will do is I'll share with you the journey we've been through and where we've culminated. That just shows the examples of what we can do as an industry sector, because effectively we're a relatively unregulated industry sector on the electronic side, particularly because we create our own standards, or the BSI creates standards. It's not an external body. I know we have the SIA license regulations on the physical side, but if I take the example of facial recognition technology, and this journey started probably 4.5 years ago, when all I ever saw, or all we ever saw in the press, was negative references of usage around facial recognition technology, or at that stage it was automatic facial recognition. And you always showed in relation to invasion of privacy and human right infringement, but you never saw any of the positive benefit examples of how it helps law enforcement and counter terrorism, either preventing terrorist attacks or apprehension of somebody that's undertaken a criminal activity. So we wanted to change the balance in that. So we started to really drill into it, and we identified an all-party parliamentary group that was actually being hosted around the usage of artificial intelligence. And then we further discovered that there were 2 draft bills, and there's still 2 draft bills that haven't gone before Parliament, requesting an outright ban or moratorium of usage over facial recognition technology. Now, we didn't believe that was good for our industry sector and not good for society in general. So we identified somebody who was leading this all-party parliamentary group. And I'm pleased to say, I probably won't name him because I haven't got his permission to name him, but we actually got an audience with him. He was a Lord who was a member of Parliament, and he actually invited us to the House of Lords to actually present from an industry perspective around facial recognition technology. Sadly, COVID kicked in, so we couldn't do that. So we did it via the same platform we're using today, MS Teams, and we presented actually a document to this Lord. And actually, our message was very simple. It's not the technology, it's the governance and compliance over its usage. So don't ban the technology. The technology is already there. It's out of the box, and Pandora's already out of the box, and it's not going back in the box. It's how you actually provide the governance and compliance around its usage. Delighted to say this particular point of contact acknowledged our views on this and concluded that maybe the group that he was leading, which is an all-party parliamentary group, didn't know enough about the technology to potentially be making recommended changes or recommended government policy. So they then invited us to the next all-party parliamentary group meeting, again during COVID, via MS Teams. So we actually recruited a subject matter expert at the same time. So this is a lady called Pauline Nordstrom, who runs Anna Cantor Consulting, who's a specialist in AI technology. And Pauline and I got an invitation to join the all-party parliamentary group next meeting. So we dialed into this meeting, and there was over 42 people on this call, and there was only 2 industry representatives. I was one of them, and our subject matter expert Pauline was the other. The rest of them were politicians, academics, or civil liberty groups. So you can imagine the direction it was going in over the usage of this technology. So we repeated our statement again, and one of those participating in it was Big Brother. So we repeated our position. It's not the technology. It's over the governance and compliance around its usage in a legal and ethical way. So we got our message across, but we came off the call and we asked the question, Paul and I asked the question, do we believe anybody sat around that table is going to write a governance and compliance, ethical and legal framework for the usage of automatic facial recognition or facial recognition technology? As you can imagine, the answer to that was a resounding no. So in the absence of that, the BSIA believed we should create it. So we brought together our members who operate in this sector, representatives from our members, and we wrote a legal and ethical guide framework around the usage of, it was at that point called automatic facial recognition, abbreviated as AFR. It took 18 months to write this document, and it was released on the 1st of February 2021, I believe was actually the date. It's the first document of its kind globally, because video crosses borders without any barriers, with the exception of the technology between NST and PAL, which are just a technology platform for America and in Europe. So, and everybody's got the same issue over the usage of this technology. We shared it with our counterparts in Europe through our membership of COES, who gave it very positive response and asked if they could adopt it or use it. We said yes, as long as you recognize the source, and we shared it with our counterparts in the US, who did the same. As a result, Pauline's presented to the European Commission around our document. This document's also got government reference, and it's a legal and ethical framework over its usage without breaching any GDPR or any actually human right infringement or invasion of privacy laws. That was the first stage. Then the next stage, we then submitted our legal and ethical guide to the BSI with a submission of developing it into a BSI code of practice standard. We submitted to the BSI. I am delighted to say the BSIA adopted it and said, yes, we can see this. And then the BSI then wrote the standard based around our legal and ethical guide advice document. Again, some of our members were participating in that working group. And usually with the standards, the only thing they've changed on the standard, or one of the main changes of the standard, is they no longer call it automatic facial recognition, because there was a bit of an adverse reaction from the general public over the word automatic, because we're not proposing you delegate decision making to machines. So they've actually adopted it and created a BSI standard on the facial recognition technology. I'm delighted to say that was actually published on the 9th of April this month, so the 9th of April 2024, and it's a BS 9347 facial recognition code of practice standard. So it's taken 4.5 years. And the great thing for me that I believe, it enables our industry to adopt advancement in technology to create safer places for people and property. But equally as important, this is a standard written for the industry, by the industry, not from somebody outside of the industry. And it has lots of protection within there. I mean, the first one is about a risk assessment. And one of the questions we posed is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Is why do you want to do it? How are you going to use the data? How are you going to protect that data? And is it legal? Is it ethical? And the other bit we always say is it's human in, human on, human final. Don't delegate decision making entirety to machines or artificial intelligence. So long answer, Becky, but hopefully that gives you an indication of what we're doing in the technology space.
No, definitely, thank you, and also gives it an indication of the kind of the work and the progress that has to go into creating codes of practice and standards. So appreciate that. If anyone wants to find out more about this new code of practice, Pauline will be speaking later at the event as well. Daniel, coming to you next. Just lastly on the kind of training and professional development side of things, in what ways, in your opinion, can training programs be adapted to better prepare security staff for the challenges of modern security demands, including crisis management and the kind of technological adaptability that we've just spoken about?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to echo what Mike said there about the fact that this technology cannot replace the human element of it. It's great having all this technology, and as someone that owns a cyber training investigation awareness company, I'm all for embracing technology, but it needs to be handled in the right way, exactly like Mike said, with those standards in place. So it's really, really good to hear about what the BSIA have done around that, really taken that by the scruff of the neck, really, and pulled that through. So really, really good. Now, what we can do as a union is we can signpost our members to IFPO, to BSIA, which we already do. But we want to be able to offer them, good and meaningful training. So again, going back to my other company, we have counter-terrorism certifications, which are, these are international accreditations, which are ISO accredited, and we offer them to our members as well, because we recognise, we spoke earlier about the police and how this epidemic of shoplifting that's happened over the last year to 18 months. We know that if we call the police, there is a 50-50 chance at the moment, it's a flip of a coin, of whether they're going to arrive or whether they're at least going to arrive on time we need them. We're more and more relying on our frontline security workers that turn up. And when they do turn up, people look at them, expecting them to be the police or to do exactly what the police would do in those situations. So, we know that the SIA have evolved their training over the last couple of years, but it's still not enough to actually give that officer that turns up at a scene of a terrorist incident or a large-scale protest or any kind of assault the tools and skills required. So what we've started doing is we're developing a set of courses online, again, for our members, again, signposting them to the other industry experts that we have here, and basically giving them some guidance around the technology as well. A lot of our members' questions to us is, well, this CCTV system has come out, or this is going on in our place of work. How do we work it? How do we navigate the GDPR issues? So again, that's something that we put in for guidance for them. We talk to the employers, we talk to the retailers, and just make sure that someone's not just picked up and placed it into an area of technology and said, get on with it, or a new technology is implemented, and again, on the Monday morning, it's just turn up and get on with it. We want to make sure that our members are protected from, falling foul of GDPR or anything else, by making sure they have that meaningful training. But yes, of course, in this day and age, everything's going towards digital, specifically AI. There's a lot of negative connotations that Mike said about artificial intelligence. But again, with the right technology, the right legislation in place and the guidance in place for the staff to use it, then in the long run, it can only be a good thing.
Definitely. I mean, we have all these incredible technologies coming to the forefront, like what we've spoken about with facial recognition, and video analytics, AI, surveillance, access control, so on and so forth. And obviously security managers and officers are expected to get these installed in their businesses to increase security. Now, this is all fine and dandy until it starts kind of affecting the job. Like we've said, we need to not be replacing roles, but helping aid security officers. We're facing this big challenge at the moment because businesses believe that technology is creating this kind of 100% preventative, idyllic kind of atmosphere in their place of work or their business, and that there's no need for kind of proactive solutions or security officer anymore, or intervention, which the majority of the time can be quite, can be ring true. But it also couples nicely with the training element, because there should be training for our frontline to be knowledgeable with these technologies, like you say, not to come in the next morning and suddenly have an entirely new system they've got to get to grips with. But yes, it needs to aid and not replace. And just Daniel, I'm going to hover on you for a second as well. Technology is rapidly reshaping the security landscape, like we've kind of analysed. And obviously, given your experience, like you mentioned, with your own cybersecurity company and training modules, from your perspective, what are the most significant technological advancements that are actually impacting the frontline security today?
Yeah, so I mean, we talk about even body-worn video cameras. We have it's a great piece of kit. 6-7 years ago, when they rolled out across all police forces, and I started wearing one as a frontline officer, there was always that bit of skepticism to begin with, but they are a great piece of kit. But we had extensive training on them before they were brought out. We're getting to the point now where security are turning up on a Monday morning and given a camera with press this button, it's on, press this button, it's off, and no real kind of training. So it'll got a great piece of kit, but useless if it can't be used in the correct way. So I think the challenges at the moment are the technology is probably moving a little bit too fast for the industry, but also not just our industry, that's the world in general. Now, I know that through police cyber investigations, when you're trying to catch people that are doing romance scams across the world, as soon as a new piece of technology comes out, the first people to exploit that are the bad actors, rather than the people that need to actually use it for their jobs. So it's the speed of movement, and it's how much time are companies going to invest in having that technology introduced to their workplaces, but also how much they invest into the staff in training and learning how to use it. Because again, it's lovely having a Ferrari on your driveway, but if you've got no driving license, it's pointless.
That's a very good analogy. And coming to you, Mike Hurst, have you got anything to add in this respect? Are we talking about technology when we're training our frontline?
We certainly should be, but just to pick out a couple of things. I mean, Dan mentioned about the bad actors using technology. Think to remember about the organised crime groups. For them, crime is a profit centre. This is how they make their money. It's to their advantage to be innovative, to adopt new technology, to adopt new methods, and to exploit gaps. That's what they do. That's their job. And these people are businesses. Most of the big businesses. So often the security are on the back foot. So we're often having to counter new threats, new threats, and so technology forms part of that. And also, one of these things, I think, like Mike said, we can't uninvent stuff. It's there, it exists. You can't say, "Oh, I'm not going to use this," because someone else will, or someone will do it. So we adopt the training too, and so security officers on the front line are, by definition, on the front line. If you walk into someone's corporate quarters or a shopping mall or wherever else is, chances are the person you see is a security officer, and so they need to be able to interact with you. They need to be informed. They need to be able to work the technology. They're not going to be experts. They're not going to sort of design and specify right code for the cameras or whatever else it is. But they need to be operated. I need to be operated and use it comfortably and with confidence. And that's a physical bit of training on how that kit works. But I think more importantly is, why are you doing it? Because I know people who've done some of our, like the CPO program, and what they said to me is they now know why they're doing what they were doing. They were doing it before, probably doing pretty well, but they didn't know why they were doing it. You didn't know, what is the security benefit of this? What is this? Why are we doing this? What is this mitigating? And if you understand it a bit more, you can be more effective. So yes, we should be training on technology. Is in the same way that we should train everyone on technology. That many we know, I always quote this one, the great Martin Smith, who sets up the SASE group. One of the things he always used to say is to people, says on the audience, how many people in your company? And they'd say 300. How many people in security? There's 2 of us. No, there's 300. everyone's got a role. Everyone's got a role to play. Now, whether it's make sure the fire door is closed or stopping tailgating, everyone's got a role, and that comes with a bit of knowledge, to have a bit of awareness of it. In the same way, security are at the front line. They need to know why they're doing it, and obviously the techniques and knowledge to do it, because it's theory and practice together, and that's what makes us all safer, all security, more puts us more secure, and also that confidence people are showing to the public that aids the perception of security as a profession, as something you can turn to. It's not just some man or woman loitering around the fire exit, doing what they're doing. There's someone who interacts, and they're there to help you and protect you. In the same way that with police officers, Danny was a police officer. Sometimes there's so much negativity on police officers. When you hear people say, "Oh, take the kids. If you misbehave, we'll take you to the police station." No, the police are there to help us. They're there to support us. Same with security. Or different responsibilities and different levels and everything else. But we've got to get the people value what we're doing. I say we. I've never been on the front line, but I've been doing this 30 odd years now. So you appreciate the value of it. So we should be training people on security, technology, as well as practice.
No, definitely, and a perfect way to end. Obviously we're approaching the end of our discussion now, so I'd like to pose just one final question to each of you, considering obviously all the aspects that we've kind of covered today. In your opinion, what is the single most important change that you believe needs to be implemented to better support frontline security personnel in the coming years? Mike Reddington, I'll come to you first.
Thanks, Becky. Well, I'm going to extend this slightly. Can just go back to throughout our conversations, there's been lots of reference of the significant increase in retail crime and the different approaches to it. I am pleased to say through many of our members and through the work of lobbying the government, there has been some progress with this in terms of in conjunction with commercial entities and those operating in the security officer sector, is that a number of large retailers have put forward funding to actually sponsor a police activity under called Project Pegasus. So Project Pegasus is launched just specifically about collating the data around retail crime, because a large proportion of that, as Mike referenced earlier, is organised crime gangs across the actual country. And the challenge that has been before, the no intervention, it was initially thought it was a non-consequence crime because the police didn't respond. Now there's been a commitment from the police forces that they will respond. And it's also, they've launched through the police, in partnership with the police, a standard platform of sharing video technology. As Daniel referenced earlier, body-worn cameras are critical. And the police have made a commitment. If there's repetitive offenders and report, they will respond to an incident and they will take action. So it's highlighting using, we talked earlier, technology to identify habitual offenders. And there's also now, they've actually upgraded the classification of it as a criminal activity. So there are now consequences for those people undertaking retail crime. And also the protection, looking at making the offence against retail employees on the front line, and our part of our approach is that should be extended, in our view, to security officers.
Yeah.
And then the next bit in terms of answering is one thing we can do. I said earlier that the part of it is this is about raising the profile of our industry sector and those operating in it. So it's seen as the value that it is actually generating. And Mike touched on earlier, security isn't just I've got to have. Security should be seen as actually a business enabler. And I would again finish off encouraging people to get behind the 3Ps campaign, is the people, property and places professionally protected, all talking with one voice, that collectively, I'm a believer that repetition prevails. If we're all walking to the same drumbeat, there's a greater potential that the general public and those operating in the commercial sector will recognise the value and the importance of those operating in the professional security industry sector. So long answer, Becky, but hopefully it's
no, fantastic. It's great to hear the movement on this topic. And also, I think, don't quote me on this, I think it's PCPI's one of their kind of tagline, so to speak, is that security should be considered like a fourth utility. It's part of every infrastructure of a like a business or a place. So definitely, 100% agree. Daniel, coming to you next for the same question. What do you think is one of the most important things that need to be implemented?
Well, how do we encourage new people into the industry? How do we retain the staff we've already got? And by doing that, we look after our people, but we don't mess them around with all these different policies and, should I intervene? Should I not intervene? Am I going to get disciplined over it? We want our security to be security. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not asking our security to start rugby tackling everybody that they think is a shoplifter or have done something wrong on a Friday or Saturday night. But we want to empower our industry to be able to protect people, because at the end of the day, when there's another government inquiry, or we have the 9 o'clock jury come out the next day, they're going to say, well, why didn't the security do this? And our security is saying, well, we wanted to do this. I think the biggest change that needs to happen at the moment is that our security employers, the top security employers in the UK and the retailers, need to get together and have a conversation about how they want to, and want for a better word, police this situation, because it is down to them to do this. The police are secondary to all this. They will turn up and they will deal with an incident or investigate crime. But how are we going to prevent it? And how are we going to do it in such a way that allows our frontline security staff to feel like they're in an industry where they are supported, protected, and would want to come and do this the next day, rather than going home thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I paying for a license, etc.? We need to, introduce good, proper wages. It's with the minimum wage has just gone up, but we're still seeing jobs for frontline security staff introduced at that bare minimum wage. You've probably seen on WhatsApp over the last few weeks the amount of people that are exposing these WhatsApp groups where they are offering cash in hand security for £8.50 or £9 an hour. There is a lot of change that between ourselves, the regulators, and the employers can do to stop that from happening. So there's some big challenges there, but I think, look, those conversations are happening at the moment. It's going in the right direction. I think the proof's going to be in the pudding. Ask me again in a year's time. We'll see where we are.
I'll hold you to that. I will be back in a year's time for Security by Live 2025, and we'll look at how far it's come. And lastly, Mike, over to you. I know you pretty much. I feel like I have your thoughts already, but go for it. What's the single most important change that you feel like needs to happen?
Well, taking it from Mike, I'll give one answer, but I'm going to give it two different parts. I think we've got to raise the perception of security. We've got people that have value security, whether it's through just the rising perception from the 3Ps campaign and other things, whether it's through accepting things like ESRM, Enterprise Security Risk Management, which is aligning security with the needs of the business. So if we can do that, that's a big part of it. And then the frontline plays its part, I feel, by producing officers who are better informed, better trained, better educated, better able to communicate. So because the officers are very often the front line, they're the face of security. So we can play our part in increasing security's perception as a whole by producing better officers, better supported, better paid, better educated, better trained, and that with the work of the BSIA and others increase the whole thing. What's the phrase? A rising tide raises all ships. Is I probably got that wrong, but that's the theme anyway. So if we could say we could play our part in, but it has to be well for everyone. What's good for frontline is good for the industry. What's good for the industry is good for the front line. It's a virtuous circle. But just final words. Thanks for the opportunity to join my colleagues here. It's been fun.
No, thank you to all of you. Mike, Daniel, you've provided invaluable contributions and insights, so thank you. And also thank you to everyone who has joined us for this engaging and enlightening panel discussion. We hope the conversation sparks further dialogue and action across the industry to support those who stand on the front line of our security industry. Please feel free to reach out to our speakers, our panelists here, or you can connect with the IFPO UK and Security Industry Federation booths at the exhibitor section of the website. Thank you all again for your time, much appreciated, and see everyone in the next session.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Mike.